years by the House, the Senate, and then President Biden, just before he left office, President Trump was also in favor of them being repealed, because what they did was, if you worked outside of government at any point in your career, and then you worked for a public entity, city, state, tribal government, county, federal government, your Social Security could be decreased by some amount of money, and some people have been really affected by this. Frank said when it first went into effect, it affected about 1 million people, and now it's up to about 3 million individual people who had their money that was contributed to Social Security taken out, and their check was reduced. That will no longer happen. Frank Valeri, to my left, is the president of the Mass Retirees Organization. He brought some material with him this morning, and I will just tell you, I retired 5 years ago this month from city clerk job. I also sat over there, sat over here. You know, I spent a lot of time in this room. This organization, which now has 50,000 members, retirees from municipal, county, and state government in Massachusetts, represents us and represents you as active employees to the state legislature, to the federal government, and does a tremendous amount of work. I think the dues now are $52 a year. It's the best $52 you could spend. That's enough. I'll let him do the pitch. The reason we asked for this session was because the retirement office is getting a lot of questions because people think retirement, they call the retirement office. We want you to do that. And while we don't have anything directly to do with the legislation, we're certainly aware of it, and as a benefit to you, and we're going to have another session, Carol, I think it's on the 24th at 11, in this room for anyone else that wasn't able to attend this morning. There was a mix-up on the mailing that went out. I didn't get mine, but I knew it was happening, so here I am. So there'll be another session, and we are recording this. BevCam is broadcasting it live on their channel 6, and it'll be available on the YouTube channel anytime people want it. And we will make sure that people know about that. So that's enough for me. Frank Valeri, as I mentioned, is the president of the Mass Retirees Organization. He lives pretty close, but he said the last time he was in Beverly, Bruce will appreciate this, was playing baseball against Beverly High School, I guess. Recently, you know. But
actually, I forgot. I was a high school basketball coach at St. Mary's of Lynn. We played a state championship game at Beverly High School.
If you've ever
we beat Matt and York.
If you've ever seen St. Mary's of Lynn play anything, they're pretty tough. So anyway, Frank's our guest. He and Mass Retirees, Sean Duhamel, who's the CEO of the organization, who will be at the session on the 24th, have been working on this literally since the law was signed in the 80s. And Sean, who will be here on the 24th, was actually at the bill signing and had a picture taken with President Biden signing the legislation. So it was a big deal. The purpose basically is to give you as much general information as we can and is as available today. And then obviously if you have any questions individually or privately, we'll stick around and Frank will stick around for a while. There is a handheld mic that Carol will carry around, so if you want to speak, just wait for the mic so that we can get you on BevCam and get your question answered. And as I said, if you have any more personal questions or more private questions, I'm sure Frank can stick around and answer those as well. So without anything more, let me introduce Frank Valeri, and thank you again for coming. I'm sure it'll be a good session for everyone.
Wes, thank you. Nice to see everybody today. I want to thank Wes, the retirement board members, Carol, and the rest of them, giving me the opportunity to come up here and see you and talk to you. It's been a busy, very busy last 4 or 5 weeks. As many of you know, that the news was very simple, that the law that's been on the books for 41 years, the two laws, the WEP and the GPO, were repealed on January 5th, signed by President Biden. And yes, Sean Duhamel I'd like to correct Wes a little bit because of my history. First, I give you a little background of who I am and what the association is and how we've been involved with this movement. The WEP and the GPO was signed in 1983. And it wasn't intended to hurt public retirees in non-Social Security states, but it ended up doing that. The purpose of it was a Social Security reform package. And this provision, these two provisions, were rolled into this massive reform bill. And it was this association, my predecessor, I've been president of the association since 2013. I'm the second president. The first president was one of the founding fathers in 1969. And he built this organization up until I took over in 2013, and we continue to be the largest and probably the most effective, I would think, retiree association in the Commonwealth. It's certainly the oldest. Because in 1983, Ralph White spoke up against the favorite son, Tip O'Neill, who was Speaker of the House. He negotiated the whole reform piece and included this provision in it, not knowing at that time, because they did grandfather people in to a certain degree for a few years, but as time went on, it grew. It was a provision that affected public employees, not only in the 7 or 8 states that don't pay into Social Security like Massachusetts. You have Texas, California, Ohio, Massachusetts, Louisiana, Nevada, a lot of retired public employees from Illinois. All were affected. But as time went on, like Wes said, when I took over in 2013, there was just under 1 million people. Now there are 3 million people that are negatively affected. The two laws affect people who work, have a split career, earn enough credits, 10 years of credits in Social Security, and get a public pension. If you receive a public pension and you have enough credits to collect Social Security, you are entitled to it. But the provisions that were signed in 1983 took almost 40% or 45% of that benefit of Social Security away from you. The formula has always been structured to help lower income people. And there was a problem. They tried to address it in 1983. Public employees in non-Social Security states who also qualified for Social Security, they were getting an enhanced benefit than the same person in a Social Security state. They were getting more because this formula was skewed to help lower paid people. So when you went to apply for Social Security and you had service in both, they would look at only the years you contributed into Social Security. They didn't know what you were doing for the city of Beverly. They didn't know what you're doing for the Commonwealth of Mass. I worked for the Commonwealth for 38 years. I had very few quarters. I got my quarters as president of the association. I get a very small Social Security check. But you know, that's what they tried to do, is try to address the fact that you were getting an enhanced benefit, because when they look back at your lifetime earnings, they didn't know what you were making in Beverly. They didn't know what I was making in the state. So they showed up as zeros. All those zeros made your lifetime earnings pretty much a false zero. So your lifetime earnings showed as though it was a lot less than it really was, because you were making money at Beverly. I was getting a check at the state. Okay, so my earnings weren't zero. But because they were showed up as zero and they had no access to our data, you felt that you were getting an enhanced replacement value of your Social Security. So if you work 35 years, you're going to get the maximum benefit. If you get 10 years or 12 years, it's going to be a lot less. But when they calculate it at 35 years, and I only have 10 in Social Security, it looks like 25 of them were zeros. So therefore, I get a replacement value of almost 90%, like lower paid Social Security recipients get. Whereas actually, I shouldn't have been getting that. So in an attempt to try to address it, they went too far. In the calculation, they reduced the first $925 a month, I think it is, right now. And they instead of giving you 90% of that, they only give you 45%. And that's how they calculate your benefit. The end result is your benefit, your Social Security benefit, once you retire, is probably going to be reduced by 45%. Now, if you get 20 years of earnings, substantial earnings, and that's confusing, I know, but substantial earnings is higher than the amount you need to get quarters in Social Security. I think you can get 4 quarters a year now by getting $7,200 or $7,300 in salary for Social Security now. So, you know, the substantial earnings, however, in other words, you've got to have substantial earnings of over 23,000, I think it is now, 25,000, to be deemed a legitimate override of the WEP. So if you work 2 full-time jobs, let's say, and you work 30 years in Social Security and 30 years in government, and those 30 years were substantial earnings, not just credits, but substantial earnings, and the SSA webpage shows a chart by year what the substantial earnings are. If you get over 20, up to 30, it's gradual, your reduction is reduced. So the closer you get to 30 years of substantial earnings, you can be a legitimate double dipper under the WEP law. Fortunately, the WEP is gone. So none of that calculation is in effect any longer. Right now, you just calculate as if everybody else, like everybody else in the country, would be calculating Social Security. And that's what the repeal for the WEP did. The other provision is called government pension offset. My wife's a good candidate. She was a lifetime career public employee. She, like most people, she didn't get her 10 years of quarters. But under the Social Security law, it was designed to help spouses who might have stayed home all the time and never worked. They provided a benefit, which calculates out to about 1/2 of whatever your benefit is. So my benefit, say it's $20,000, she's eligible for a $10,000 benefit as a spousal, whether she put her quarters in or not. Okay, that was wiped out because they set up a formula, the offset, government pension offset, whereby they take 2/3 of your pension, your public pension. Say if you get a pension worth $15,000, 10,000 of that is offset, whatever the spousal benefit is. In most cases, the government pension offset today, because the average pension for public retirees at such a level, it eliminates the spousal benefit. So in Massachusetts, there was some 30,000 plus public employees affected negatively, and we're getting nothing to almost nil. Because there are some I have older retirees call me who get a very small check. And they went to work maybe part-time and they worked in the library before they get out and they get 15, 16 years in, they get a small public pension. That little offset doesn't offset the entire benefit, but it offsets most of it. So in most cases, the woman that call me, the elderly woman that call me, the surviving spouses, they're at an age where their husband is gone, they've been hurt significantly, and they only get enough maybe to cover the Medicare payment. And that's what was happening. But again, with the GPO repeal, that's not in play. So now my wife, who was getting nothing from Social Security, will now be able to apply for Social Security, even though she's got a smaller pension. She retired young because she had a mother that was sick. And so therefore, you know, her pension wasn't that great, and she wasn't eligible for anything of mine. But now she will be eligible for half of my pension. So those are the 2 laws. The windfall, remember, look at it as something that affects your own earned benefit. The GPO was a law that eliminated any spousal benefit or survivor benefit. If you are as a survivor now, thank God, with my wife, she would get only half now, but if I pass away, she'd get my full Social Security. Without the repeal, she would have got nothing. So that's how the older members that I have, as Wes said, we have about 52,000 members. We have membership cards that everybody gets when they renew. My home phone number is on the membership card. Everybody in my association, or my offices, our home numbers or contact numbers are on the card. People can call at any time. You know, we get people that unfortunately, you know, they get a letter in the mail on Saturday morning. They don't know what to do. They're panicking because Social Security contacted them. They owe $3,000 back. They call us. We don't mind that.
I called him this morning. I wanted to make sure that we were all set for this session. And I pulled out my card and looked at the number. I said, oh, here it is right here. And I called him. At this point, I know that the big questions that we've gotten and that people have and that, that Frank and the office, excuse me, in Boston have gotten is, okay, the president signed the law on January 6th, I think.
Yep.
When will the full amount be restored to people's checks that have been affected by it? When will those calculations be done? And how long is it going to take for all of that to happen? For the checks, for the monthly checks to be corrected to the amount that people should be getting of those 3 million people nationwide. And secondly, the law was made retroactive to January 1st of last year, 2024. So when will that retro money be calculated and available to people? And I think those are most of the questions that people are getting now, and part of the reason that we wanted to have this session. Before we get to that, on what's the WEP, what's the GPO, and the stuff that Frank talked about so far, does anybody have any questions on those two things before we get into the implementation of the actual legislation? Carol's got the mic. Anybody? Okay. Yeah, Carol.
So, and I've got my mic. So what if somebody had, say, 32 years of service outside of the city of Beverly, and then had an additional, say, 12 years of service in Beverly? So vested in Beverly, but 32 years of Social Security income outside. Does it affect them at all?
No, no, as long as during the 32 years there was substantial earnings.
And that number was what, 7,300 you said?
Right now, it's 73, but if you go back to like 1980, it's a lot less. You
Yeah,
know, it's
right.
indexed.
Yeah, a
So,
couple grand, yeah.
You need the, you know, a lot of people, we know a lot of people that are teachers and firefighters, they all sometimes work a second job.
Right.
You know, and they put in that many years and they have that kind of money they made, they would have been exempt. But there are 85,000 public retirees that have been wept in this state so far. So this law is gonna help 85,000. And you know, I see most of you people are active. How many people are retired here? Well, most of you are active, okay? And it's gonna help you tremendously. And what's happened over, the reason why it's increased from 1 million to 3 million today, because our workforce has changed. When I started in state government, I want to tell you, 1974, 75, okay, people who started for the state, stayed with the state and retired. The workforce has changed. People like yourself have worked in the private sector, have a partial career in the public sector, and contributed substantial earnings, and then you went to work in public sector, and you got vested and you got some type of benefit. So your workforce has changed. You have more blended workforce where people work in both public and private sectors. And that's why it has grown. Because as people get older and go to retire now, those people are seeing what is going on. How come my Social Security was cut in half? And it was something that people didn't quite understand because it really hadn't hit people to this generation. And like, you know, for instance, the 7 states, politically we tried from 1983 to 2013 or 14 to do the full repeal. When I took over, it was my fault, I guess, but I redirected the mission of the association and said, this is crazy. I know this association. I worked in the State House. My background was I worked in government. I worked for the House of Representatives. I worked for the State Senate. I worked for the Pension Oversight Committee, PERAC. You know, that was my business. And I could sense when I started going to meetings, and I was like, Wes talked about our Peabody meeting, we have 200 or 300 people there sometimes. And, you know, I could see the people when my predecessor and Sean Duhamel, who was the point person in this law, would get up and talk about all the issues. Now, when they talked about the WEP and GPO, I could see the members say, yeah, right, rolling their eyes, it's never gonna happen, it's 30 years, it's not even getting out of committee. It wasn't even out of committee for 30 years. So I made a decision to look at maybe a reform piece to try to get something for people back. Something would give people an increase per month. And we worked very close. And in the newsletter here, you can see I was down in 2022 in December. We thought we had a chance of getting that bill out of committee and moving it over to the Senate. You know, it was very disappointing, and I was discouraged tremendously. Then when the new Congress came in, I didn't really think anything was going to happen until it developed. And it was like lightning struck. The stars aligned. Politically, it happened. And we have no explanation other than the fact that we know this is what we were originally supporting, but had to go and I guess reform was the way that I thought was a better possibility. To get that bill passed, you needed 60 votes in the Senate. It wasn't a majority of 51. It was a 60-vote margin. And because of that, we thought we had to go with the reform piece versus the repeal. But as the way things worked out, it came about. And it's helped a lot of people in the state. It's gonna help a lot of active people too when they go to retire. They won't have to worry about it. My biggest fear is that Social Security reform is gonna hit the waves again in a few years. And unfortunately, we don't know what's gonna happen then, but right now, we know it's repealed. So, you can go to the podium. You can go to the podium if you want.
we won't be able to pick you up. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay, you can stay right there.
We wanna put you on the camera.
It's about the substantial income. Isn't
Yeah.
it 32,000 for this year? It was 31,000, like, what
I'm
is
not,
that
I'm
number?
not, you know, I'm not sure what it is. It's indexed, it's gone up. I think it's probably 25.
Well, I have it for 32,700
Wow.
for this year, 2025, 31,275 for last year, and
Yeah.
every year it increases.
Yeah, right. Well, you know why it has, you know why it's increased substantially? Because over the last several years, the CPI index has grown tremendously. It's gone up 20% in the last 4 years, the index. Inflation has caused that number to go from 25 to 31.
Yep, but my question then is that the number that we have to come to for Social Security to
No.
have it be substantial in their
The
eyes?
substantial earnings number level is only used when you try to see if you're gonna you can be exempt from the WEP, when the WEP was in place. So you can forget about the substantial earnings now, because it's been repealed. There's no need. All you need is $7,500 a year in Social Security to get 4 quarters, and that'll qualify you. But remember, when they calculate your Social Security benefit, it's based on your lifetime earnings. So if you're only making $10,000 a year to get your 4 quarters, because you're working part-time and you want to get your Social Security check, it's not gonna be the a big benefit like if you were making $60,000 or $70,000. So it's based on salary, it's based on average income. And all you need is the minimum quarters. 4 quarters, I think, right now is about $7,300 to get 4 quarters a year. So you don't worry about the substantial earnings any longer. That's been repealed. The substantial earnings was put in to see who could be a legitimate double dipper, I guess is what the way to look at it. You needed that many years, up to 30. It was a sliding scale between 20 and 30. The closer you got to substantial earnings at 30, the more.
Yeah, 5%.
Right. So, not to worry about that any longer.
Any,
Now, can I just mention one thing too?
Go ahead, Frank.
Our dues are only 46 now.
Oh, I stand corrected.
52.
I think Betty has a question in the back.
I think he wants me to stand at the podium.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
We worked that out.
yes.
We've been asked to notify Social Security when you start collecting a pension so that they could,
Yeah.
reduce it.
Yeah.
Do we still have to notify them?
No.
Just
Let
let it go?
me go over this. There's a lot of scenarios that are out there that I think it's gonna have some bearing on how soon it'll be processed and what you need to do and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. First of all, if you are collecting Social Security from a spouse who passed away or a survivor benefit, and you're still working for the city of Beverly, let's say, you know, that benefit probably, because you hadn't retired, was the full benefit. And then if you once retired with Wes and Carol with the city of Beverly, you should notify Social Security and they would reduce it. No longer needed, because now you keep the full Social Security benefit, because the law has been repealed. Prior to that, you're right, you would require, if you didn't, they were gonna back bill you anyway, so you had to.
I've gotten 2 letters asking me if I retired without collecting a pension, so I'm no longer here.
You don't have to worry about that any longer. Now, if you,
I'm sorry, are you good then? It seemed like there was a question that came up on the chat. I don't know if that's something that you can see there, or if it was part of the Google Meet chat, Wes?
I don't know how to
Russ.
do that.
Yeah, Russ. I meant Russ. So it looks like somebody put a question out on the Google Meet chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just go over some scenarios, to try to address, a lot of you people are active, so it doesn't apply, but for the retirees who lost money, in other words, if you were reduced, there's really not much you can do at this point in time. If you were denied or terminated, I guess, or denied a benefit, verbally or in writing, you need to call the local Social Security office. We're recommending that you call the local Social Security office and call and make an appointment to sit down and tell them, I want to make an application for my Social Security benefit that in most cases, is a surviving spouse benefit or just a spousal benefit. So it's one of those two. And, if you have been reduced, you need to call and get an appointment as soon as possible. Wes mentioned the retroactivity.
Frank, excuse me, could I just, there was a question on the chat, I think you've answered it. Do they reduce your pension if you are collecting Social Security, or is it the other way around?
No, your pension is not reduced. It's the Social Security that's
Right.
reduced.
Right, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you have been reduced, okay, you gotta wait until they process it. They're having problems with the staffing issues and some technology issues. They can't just flip a switch and get it done, unfortunately. So if you have been reduced, you've got to sit back and wait for it to be processed. It will be paid retroactive to January 1, 2024. So in some cases, for surviving spouses, it's going to be a significant check that comes eventually when they process. Now, if you were denied, but verbally or by letter, you need to make an appointment and apply for the benefit. I'm not sure, unless you maybe have a dated letter denying you, you could make a case with them, but I'm not sure how they're gonna handle the retroactivity of those who were denied verbally. There's no record, there's no record. And they talk about numbers in Massachusetts of 30,000 spousal benefits being affected negatively. I think that number is gonna be much higher, because I think there's a lot of situations where people were becoming aware of it. They know because they were a public retiree, they weren't eligible for it, they didn't even bother applying. I don't think they know that, how many people are out there like that, and I think there's gonna be a ton that go in there and walk in and apply for the spousal benefit. Whether that's going retroactive or not, I can't tell you.
There was quite a bit of information in the press, and Mass Retirees Sean does a weekly broadcast that goes out to everybody every Friday, and the newsletter that you have a copy of goes out once a month. I think that was a special edition, actually, on this subject. But one of the things that they put out as a special message last week had a link to a fact sheet from Social Security that answered a lot of the general questions that people had. And they were saying things like, initially, they anticipated it would take a couple of months to do all these calculations, because if you think about it, even in this room, every single person's calculations are going to be individual. And if you're talking 3 million people, that's 3 million individual calculations that have to be done for people at a time when, even before all the changes that are going on in Washington now, Social Security Administration has historically been, and Frank can tell you, underfunded and understaffed. And that was before some of the things that are going on in Washington now, which you don't know what's going to happen then. So the latest thing is that month or two that it was going to take as an estimate originally is probably going to be longer for people to get the retroactive money and to get their monthly benefit corrected to what it should be. It will happen and it will be done, but the work of doing those individual calculations for 3 million plus people, it's going to take some time with all the other things that they do anyway. So the best information that we've gotten, and I think Frank can reinforce this, is to go on the Social Security website to look at the information that they posted by them, so it's factual, and don't respond to scams that come over the internet or anything that you see on social media or anything, you want to get your information from an official website like SSA.gov or like the Mass Retirees website and the newsletter and the mailings and like that. And the other thing is to call. I think, Dave, you have,
Quick question. Are our Social Security benefits figured on our municipal wages?
No, that's the reason that WEP was originally written for. Because our contribution, we don't pay into Social Security. There are several states where a majority of the public employees don't pay into Social Security. But the reason why it's grown is because there are other states. It's grown from the 7 states, and I think that's what got the impetus politically to get this done. Because like in Maine, the teachers are in Social Security, are outside of Social Security. In Connecticut, the teachers are outside of Social Security.
So what is it based on?
Your Social Security? Your
The
Social Security is
payment.
based on.
How do they figure how much I'm gonna make, Joe's gonna make, you know?
Was based on only your quarters that you paid into Social Security. You gotta recognize your private sector private sector service versus your public sector service. And your calculation, as you know, for your public sector is based on age, service, and salary. Very similar to Social Security. Now, Wes is right that the latest link from the Social Security webpage is talking about a year plus, over a year now, to get these things recalculated. And that's going to affect those people, okay, that have had a benefit reduced. If you have to have a benefit recalculated, they don't have the capability and the resources, the technology to do it. They're going to have to go back and manually recalculate those 3 million people and readjust the benefits. Okay, now the surviving benefit and the spousal benefit I talked to you about, if you were denied and we've gotten members, believe it or not, who've gotten a check for surviving spouses because you're applying new, you're a new applicant. There's no adjustment to your current. So if you're getting any kind of Social Security check that has to be readjusted, it could take a year. If you're a spouse who was denied, verbally or in writing, okay, you can now apply. Now, I don't know whether the retroactive date applies to the January 1/24, the date of your application, but you need to make that application. You need to call the local office and set up an appointment. You may be on hold for a long time, but it's worth it. We've had members call us and say that they sat there on the phone, they finally got through, they set an appointment up. They called the day after the law was signed. And they set up, and there were surviving spouses. They didn't have any benefit. They just applied, and they're now getting a check from Social Security. And I didn't get much information from some of the members whether it's going to be retroactive or not. So it is working, and that's why I say you shouldn't sit back and take your time. You should, if you had been denied, have no benefit whatsoever, no recalculation that has to be done, you should make that appointment at the local office. And I think your regional office would be Salem. Salem.
right.
So I think that's pretty much where we're at. Again, this was signed 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, and it's a huge task. And there's a lot of things, unfortunately, going on in Washington with the federal employees overall. So I don't know. I really don't know what the implementation is going to look like. But if you're going to be readjusted, you're going to be patient. It's going to happen.
Question there.
Is it on?
Yep.
I just want to be clear. I have retired for several years. I have been reduced for several years. Do I need to call and get an appointment? Or
No. If you're a recalculation, in other words, you're getting money already. You're already on the Social Security payroll.
Right.
And you have to be recalculated.
Right.
They will get to it, but they got to do it individually. Those are the ones like Wes talked about with the Social Security webpage indicated on that link. You should go on ssa.gov, and it's right at the top of the homepage. You can link into that report, and they tell you an update, and they're saying it could be up to a year for recalculation.
And I heard that recently on the local news, that they said
Yeah.
maybe next April.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that I can just sit back and wait, and they're gonna do it.
If you've been reduced, you have to wait for the recalculation. It's going to happen.
But they will initiate it. I don't have to initiate anything.
No.
Okay,
They'll do it,
thank you.
okay?
Other questions?
Just more a comment if I could. Wes, you mentioned it, and Frank, I did you as well, is just resources that are out there. So when we started to put this gathering together, I went to the massretirees.org. Is that the website? right?
Massretirees.org, and the newsletter that Wes, I think, passed out to everybody has a link to, if you want to join the back page here. The webpage is on the top. You know, we have membership, what we call associate membership. If you have more than 10 years of service and you're over 55 years of age, you can join as an associate member, which puts you on a mailing list, and you get this bi-monthly newsletter, as Wes indicated. It's just chock full of information. There are no advertisements in it, and it gives you a complete update. What you have here was a special edition that was done just to promote the repeal and the WEP and the GPO. It's got pictures back, and the front page shows how our newsletter looked a lot different in 1983. But in 1983, the headline was, Social Security amendments of 1983 reduce Social Security benefits for public retirees. It couldn't have been any truer.
Carol, your question.
Yeah, so there were, so when I went on the website, there are a lot of links that are really helpful. If you go in, you can see the latest news, so you can kind of keep up with the legislation and where it is, right through massretirees.org. So I found it really helpful.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah. We spend a lot of time on the, this voice that we do everything internally here. We have a small office. We all chip in and do the writing, get the information. I'm always calling the boards, asking them who the new members are. We update the board membership, things like that. But, you know, this is probably the largest change to public retirees in Massachusetts in decades. So for those who are retired and those who are active, it's a very positive movement, and we're thrilled that it finally took place.
Just any other questions?
Any other questions?
Just a couple of things real quickly, and we do have more coffee and donuts. You're welcome to take some. And just on behalf of the Retirement Board, I want to thank everybody for showing up. If you don't mind, we really would like to promote the other session that we're going to do for anyone who's interested in active employees, retirees, anybody, on the 24th, right here at 11 o'clock. I'm sure we'll have coffee and donuts again. I wanted to let you know, because somebody asked me this morning, we've had a couple of changes in the retirement office. As you know, we moved out of City Hall down to 275 Rantoul Street. It's the white-colored building across from Gloria Foods. And currently, our executive director, Colleen Laughlin, resigned a couple of weeks ago, so we've been having a search. It was posted, and we've had a number of applications. Deputy Chief Smith and I screened the applications that we've gotten so far for a replacement. We're going to have some interviews next week, and I understand from Mary Sullivan from HR that we've gotten a couple of more resumes that we'll look at. So currently, Megan McLaughlin is the sole employee down there. She's very good, she's very energetic, and she's been very efficient about covering both jobs while she's the only person in the office. But it is our intention to fill that position as quickly as we can, and we've gotten, I think we've gotten some very strong applications for the position, because that job is critical to all of us, because the day-to-day work that gets done in that office affects us, our spouses, our families, everybody else on the pension side. The other thing I would say, just having gone through the process myself, you know, I served on the city council, I worked as city clerk, so I was a political guy. I was city clerk for 6 years, and I had the experience of dealing with the retirement office, both as a counselor and as a department head, and now as a retiree. And the one piece of advice I would give to everybody, especially people that are not retired currently, but maybe looking at it soon or not soon, is don't wait until the last minute to get an idea of what your individual retiree pension will look like. They can do those calculations at any time. The other thing is, anyone who's a veteran, there are specific benefits that are eligible, that veterans are eligible for. Some of those just changed in the last session of the state legislature, so that's very important. but for everyone. Retirement as an experience, I can tell you, is a big adjustment. It's an adjustment financially, emotionally, for your family, for yourself, and you want to anticipate those things as well as you can for your own life, but most importantly, financially. It's a big change, and you want to be sure, both on the pension side and on the benefits side, and the benefits obviously are all handled by HR. So your medical, your dental, and everything else is handled by them. The pension is what we do. The pension is what we handle. And the board itself, I can tell you, I just got reelected to another 3-year term, so thank you for that. I appreciate the fact that most of what we do is routine in approving the pensions that come up before us every month. The ones that get tricky or are more complicated are disability or medical, obviously death benefits and things like that, not death benefits, but deaths of pension, people that are receiving a pension, and we deal with those as well. So it's very important to let us know. Make sure we have current information for you, so we have a correct address, a correct email address, a correct phone number, whichever ones you want us to use. We don't give those out to anybody. Those are kept confidentially in the office. And the last thing is, don't be reluctant to check in and make an appointment and go down there. And just find out, so you have an idea if it's going to be soon or if it isn't even going to be soon, what you are eligible for in your public pension, particularly if you've worked in other places besides Beverly, because that money will follow you. We have people that have worked in multiple public locations for other municipalities, for the state, for the county, for some housing authority, different boards. Those things can all be figured out, but it takes a little time to do that. And so you have a good idea of what you're eligible for. It's very important. Any other questions? And please, we'll stick around. If you have any individual questions that you want to talk to Frank privately about, welcome to do that. And take advantage of the coffee and donuts if you'd like. I really appreciate you coming today.
Wes, can I just finish by, do we have any veterans here? The veterans? You can exercise your right to buy time back that if you missed doing that in the past. Buying back veteran time, there was a window of opportunity. If you didn't do it within a certain window by law, if it was strict interpretation of law, you couldn't buy it. But a bill was passed, as Wes mentioned, last year, that reopened the window up until August of this year. So you can go in and purchase that time, and I think most boards allow that buyback up to 5 years.
Yeah.
The state does that. I also serve on the State Retirement Board and on the Lynn Retirement Board. We generally give people up to 5 years to pay that time back, and it's, the veteran buyback time is not that expensive because there's no interest calculation.
And there was we did a separate mailing to veterans, letting them know about that. And again, if you have an individual question about it, if you haven't already looked into it, just check in with the retirement board office, and they'll look over your individual situation and make sure that you have the information. The last thing I would say is that we're, couple of things that we're looking at right now. The legislature, the state legislature increased the life insurance benefit that was $5,000 to a surviving beneficiary to $10,000 for state employees and mass teachers. Anybody in the teachers' retirement system or a state employee, they got it. They also gave the 102 local retirement boards the option of requesting it. Because it's a benefit in Beverly that's paid by the city, our board, our retirement board, is in the process of working with the city to see if the city will increase that benefit from $5,000 to $10,000. The second thing is, we recently were able to get the city to agree, the council and the mayor, to an increase in the cost of living adjustment. The cost of living adjustment, it was set at $12,000. We got them to increase it to 13. The average statewide is around 16.
16, yeah.
And there are some communities or municipalities that are up to 20. So one of the things that's on our agenda right now is some consideration of, again, requesting, getting our board to agree to an amount that we feel is fair and is reasonable based on our fiduciary responsibility to protect the pension fund and the city's responsibility. If we are successful in getting it out of our board, then it would come to the city council and the mayor for their approval, because the city obviously pays a portion of that as well as we do out of the pension fund. So we have a number of big things along with that routine stuff that we do that we're looking at. We just started the discussion at our last meeting, and I'm sure it'll continue beyond that. So those are things that we feel very strongly about and on your behalf, and that we, we'll be working on. So anything else?
The death benefit is something that we pushed for the Commonwealth of Mass. For state employees, is 90,000 active members and 67,000 retirees. It applies to all state retirement board. I think the teachers was with the municipality too, so.
That's right.
So
Right.
it's the state board, it's a lot of people. And I'm on the Lynn Retirement Board, we're actually doing the same thing, looking at doubling the basic life benefit. And the basic life benefit for the Commonwealth, I retired in 2013, but I started in 1975. It was 1985 when they moved it from 2,000 to 5,000. So it was a priority of mine. The older you get, the more, unfortunately, you run across that. We have to bury parents and understand how difficult it is. And, a 1985 benefit should be updated eventually. And the legislature was nice enough to double it, and we got it passed in the budget last year. It's effective July 1 of this year. So we were able to have it transitioned in over a year.
Dave, one more.
Who ultimately has the final say over the death benefit going from 5,000 to 10,000?
City council and the mayor.
Yeah.
Because it's paid out of the city budget. Carol, that's correct, isn't it? Yeah, it's a city benefit. But on your behalf, as the retirement board, we felt that we had a legitimate reason, since the legislation suggested to the local retirement boards that we promote it, that we at least request it on your behalf to the council and the mayor. And we haven't approved that yet on our board, but it was on our agenda for our last meeting. We have another meeting at the end of the month. I'm sure it'll come up again. Joe?
So Wes, the city's paying for an insurance policy for $5,000 per employee.
That's correct.
Is the cost difference that much greater to jump to 10,000 that may deter them to do that?
Yeah, it
In your
is.
opinion, do you think it will go?
It doubles. It'll double.
If I was sitting in that seat before, I'd say that everything in the budget is any addition to the budget is an addition to the budget. And I don't think it's any secret to anybody in this room. The mayor's made it very clear publicly, and it's come up in meetings in this room, that the budget for this year, the city budget for next fiscal year, which would start July 1st, is going to be tight. And they're actually saying, and I think Jerry Perry, the city's budget analyst, even the council's budget analyst, even said that the fiscal 27 budget for next year looks to be even tighter. So money is money, Joe, and our responsibility on the retirement board is to bring it forward as a request. The answer to your question is ultimately it's a decision of the council to recommend it to the mayor, and the mayor to either approve it or not. They can also override the veto. That's another thing. But it's more money in the coming out of the city budget at a time when it's tight.
And can I just, like, for the state, what we were looking at for a cost, it was 80-20. So it's a bigger cost for the employer than it is for the employee. I think the Commonwealth, depending on when you retired, the monthly premium, I think, for most retirees is about $1.68 a month. It's very short. So even if you double that, it's not really a big hit. It certainly beats any of the private market products that you see out there for a $10,000 basic life benefit, So, it is a cost for the employer, because depending on the split you have here, I'm not sure what it is. In Lynn, it's 75-25. For the state, it's 80-20. So clearly, the employer picks up a lion's share of the increased cost.
I think, Carol.
It's 50-50 here, Frank.
What's that?
50-50.
It's 50-50, so you're splitting it with the city. So,
Dennis?
you guys mentioned about making an appointment with your local social security agent. You can also go online to the SSA.gov website and create an account and check your
Yes.
benefits and see.
Yep.
So I just want to mention that.
My SSI, or something like that, yeah.
SSA.gov.
Yeah, right.
And just so you know, it takes 5 to 10 days for them to reply back to you to give you an authorization code because they got to verify who you are.
Yeah. And when Frank mentioned, he asked the question about the local social security office, it's based on your residence. So for Beverly, I know it's Salem, but my son and his wife live, right, my son and his wife live in Linfield, they would go to Lynn. So which office is local to you is based on where you live. Yours would be.
Yeah, I'm in Saugus, so I have to go to Lynn.
Right.
You can go to the SSA.gov, and it's, they have a location finder, office location. You punch in your zip code, and it'll tell you where your local office is, yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? Thanks very much for coming. Frank, thanks for coming. We appreciate all your time, and please promote the session on the 24th for anybody else.